Back to another video. It's your boy Corey the Man. We've been doing great viewership lately. Um Today we're gonna do 4 videos. Yeah man. We got time. Anyways, this is the first video we got right now. This is the era saved and destroyed Cartoon Network news era. I'm still waiting on my camera to come in. It should be in today or tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, let's get right into it. Here we go.
Sort of. Now, if you've been with me up until this point, I
See you,
think we've
27
seen
minutes.
almost every
We got a
aspect of
long
what
one.
the Cartoon Network eras have had to offer. But if you haven't been with me, let me give you a little recap. We've seen Cartoon Network's humble beginnings with the checkerboard era, where classic cartoons such as Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones were aired. Once the network got established, it looked to put all of the other cartoon channels on notice, with the Powerhouse era, in which original cartoons were made. After that, there was a short transition period with the underrated Starburst era that put all of the homegrown cartoons on primetime. Then we got arguably one of the greatest periods of cartoons ever with CN City. Cartoons old and new, acquired and original, lived amongst each other in a utopia. But the funny thing is, if this era was looked at as the Great Gatsby of cartoons, then ironically enough, we would find ourselves in the Great Depression with the Yes and Fall era. Original cartoons such as Dexter's Laboratory, the Powerpuff Girls, and Courage the Cowardly Dog were all seeing their end during these times, which would leave Cartoon Network in a proverbial drought for the time being. But with the era that would come next, that drought would be over. The Noods era, in many people's eyes, is the saving grace for Cartoon Network. The Noods era saved Cartoon Network from what was going to be the point of no return. But the biggest question from that is, why? How did the Noods era save Cartoon Network? What were the shows, blocks, and overall direction like? Well, we're about to find all that out
saved it.
right now.
I'm glad
The
they
Noods
showed
era was
Ben 10. He
launched on
in
July
integral.
14th, 2008, and is
No
the
matter which
8th
one it
official
was.
era for
Well,
Cartoon
not the
Network.
latest one.
I would love to start off with the obvious elephant in the room, but I want to start off with something that shouldn't go unnoticed because it's important. The biggest note of all was a statement that Cartoon Network would release leading up to the launch of the Noods era. Now I'm going to paraphrase a bit, but the statement goes as follows. Cartoon Network's brand identity is inseparable from the identities of the countless interesting and adorable characters who inhabit the CN airwaves. The characters in themselves are the brand, and their collective power makes Cartoon Network what it is. With this redesign, the CN team wanted to create an undeniably strong connection between the network and its content. The resulting world is a playground of rich colors and unlimited combinations, ownable only by Cartoon Network. Now you may be like, but Murray, what does this all mean? This really all seems like word salad and a whole lot of nothing. This is the type of direction Cartoon Network needed going into their next era. New and fresh cartoons needed to be put at the forefront with a big emphasis on the design of the promotional marketing. With this statement alone, this feels like the most focused Cartoon Network has had since CN City, which is a good sign. In doing so, Cartoon Network would step away from Shiloh Designs and collaborated with Capacity and Kid Robot for the bumpers of this era. Which brings us to the elephant in the room. Majority of the era's bumpers and promotional marketing would feature these white dummy figures known as Noods, which is what the era would be named after. And you can tell that Cartoon Network got their money's worth with these things. They're doing anything and everything in these bumpers, from running, jumping, dancing, playing ice hockey, snowboarding, you name it. Regardless of their colorful and plain designs, these things were full of personality when they were on screen. But the thing that will make the Noods unique would be the look that they take on of numerous Cartoon Network characters. Most of the characters that the Noods would emulate were from shows that were being featured during the era's programming, which you can tell from this photo alone was a lot. And actually, looking back at it now, the Noods remind me of Funko Pops in their appearance, and I just find that a little funny. Which, in actuality, according to the wiki, the Noods design was based on a DIY toy called Money, also made by Kid Robot. The strongest attribute that these bumpers had was its sheer amount of bumper types. So prepare yourself. You of course had your sign-on bumper for when the Adult Swim hours would end, which I really liked because you see how the nude comes in from the black background. He's just like, yeah, we're just gonna clean all of that and nude the place up. You then had the traditional next bumpers that featured said character from their show in the form of a nude with a close-up shot of them. Their color palette could be seen at the bottom of the screen. I also think it's worth mentioning that the voice announcers for this era featured Greg Sipes, who was the longtime voice of characters like Beast Boy and Michelangelo, and Will Arnett, who played the voice of Batman in the Lego Batman movie. Their voices will be used for the now, next, and later bumpers. During the holiday periods like Halloween, you'd have these bumpers that either featured the nudes in these spooky Halloween costumes or cartoon characters doing Halloween activities. I definitely had no recollection of Cartoon Network bringing back Super Chung based on the bumpers for it. Very CN City-like with how the nude would cross the woods with certain items from notable Cartoon Network shows seen in the background. Strangely enough, you had this miscellaneous bumper that featured most of the nude-styled cartoon characters, but with no music in the background, which has me to wonder if this was actually aired on TV. But some of my favorite bumpers were from the grocery store ones. These bumpers would show grocery items going down the checkout counter, which would then reveal the cartoon character that was related to that item, whether it be a pile of fruits already bitten into to reveal Chowder, or some empty maple syrup bottles along with some candy to reveal Flapjack and Knuckles. There's not much to it other than I really like the simple but creative style of these bumpers. And just to show you how important of a time this era was made around, Cartoon Network would make bumpers that were made for the inauguration day of former US President Barack Obama. Now, if that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will. During these types of bumpers, they'd ask the kids what they'd do if they were US President.
I would lower taxes a little bit.
And to bring it back around, you had the sign-off bumpers that would lead into the Adult Swim block. Don't just take my word for it when I say that Cartoon Network did absolutely everything with the nudes and then some. They weren't bluffing when they said that their world was a playground of rich colors and endless combinations. You absolutely see that play out in just how much variety the bumpers have and the charm that they bring. Although I'm nowhere near finished talking about the bumpers, I highly recommend you check out what's been archived through the years, especially if you grew up watching this era. But with the charm that the bumpers would bring, Cartoon Network would extend that charm into something as simple as the CN logo. I left this part out, but in Cartoon Network's statement it says, "The CN logo is also an extension of this vocabulary, as the colors and patrons of the characters." With some of the bumpers, you had them ending with said characters' color patterns transferring over to the logo itself. Even though this wouldn't create any big changes as far as enhancing the era, as Cartoon Network said, the logo was an extension of how they wanted to express this era. Now, unlike the fall era, the programming for this era had a lot more original shows that premiered more than they had shows that ended. The new original shows would consist of Total Drama Island, The Secret Saturdays, Ben 10, Ultimate Alien, Generator Rex, George of the Jungle, Star Wars The Clone Wars, Batman Brave and the Bold, and one of the all-time greats, Adventure Time. Now, I'm not going to give Adventure Time a proper introduction only because it was not featured as prominently as it would until the next era. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, My Gym Partner's a Monkey, Transformers Animated, and Ben 10 Alien Force would all air as well, but would see their end to airing new episodes during this era. However, Flapjack and Chowder would still be ongoing during this time. But it's actually sad to know that Ed and Eddy would be the last cartoon to air during this era. I just find it ironic that the Noods era was a new era for Cartoon Network, but it was the end of an era for Cartoon Network's OG shows. Speaking of end of an era, program blocks such as Toonami and Friday Dynamite would be replaced by Har Har Thursdays and the You Are Here block. Har Har Thursdays, formerly known as CN Thursdays and New Thursday Nights, was a program block that featured new episodes of Cartoon Network original series. This block featured shows such as Camp Lazlo, Chowder, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and George of the Jungle. Being that har har is the
It's crazy.
phonetic
I know
word
all
for
those shows.
laughter, Capacity centered the block's
Watch them
bumpers
all.
around that. The
Most
block's
of them.
sign-on bumper started with laughter, with a series of colors and quick transitions to colorful nudes that had eyes and mouths that were laughing. While the You Are Here and traditional nudes bumpers maintained a CGI art style, Har Har Thursdays chose the classic 2D style that we were used to seeing. I remember this block for its look and feel, but I remember it more so because of the shout out it would get in an episode of Flapjack.
Bubby certainly knocked him down a size.
Har Har Thursday!
As for the You Are Here block, it would feature more action and adventure-based cartoons, such as Star Wars The Clone Wars, The Secret Saturdays, Ben 10 Alien Force, and Batman Brave and the Bold. With the bumpers for the You Are Here block, it favored more of an award show type of look more than it did an action one. Everything from a gold grid, gold bricks, and a golden nude known as King Nude. Alternatively to that, it also had a blue aesthetic that featured a nude that was all black with horns. Not quite sure what the distinction was between the two bumpers outside of their looks. But this is where we'd see unique bumpers that featured Star Wars The Clone Wars characters. Some of my favorite bits about these bumpers were the 8-bit versions of popular Star Wars themes that played throughout the bumpers. Also seeing the nudes wield lightsabers and even some of them turning into a lightsaber themselves were really great visuals to see. Seeing how some of the bumpers played out, it was like watching a mini episode in of itself, and you would almost forget that it was even a bumper in the first place by how well they were made. I just like in how one of the bumpers, Yoda just outright does a fatality to one of the characters.
Yoda wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
Knowing how serious the Clone Wars series took itself, it was funny to see a nude-shaped Skywalker use the Force, or see stormtroopers march in a pack. You could tell that Capacity was excited to have been able to use the Star Wars IP to make these bumpers. In general, all of these bumpers had tremendous variety mixed in with a fair level of quality. But if I did have one critique as a bit of a nitpick, I'd say I would have liked some element of voice acting from certain characters in some of the bumpers. While I do think the bumpers were just fine without them, reminiscent to CN City, seeing what Chowder would have said to Johnny Test or Flapjack interacting with Heather would have been something to see. But I understand if Cartoon Network wanted to cut back the cost of having to pay voice actors for extra lines and fall back into an era being too expensive. But from the fair looks of it, Cartoon Network has stayed true to its statement about keeping cartoons as its main identity, and that's a great thing to see. When I think about the statement that I had shared earlier, I can't help but think about the person in leadership behind this era, because that's ultimately who's calling the shots here. During the Noods era, Stuart Snyder would serve as president for Cartoon Network. Now, if you're unaware as to who Stuart Snyder was, in my last era retrospective, I openly criticized him for his questionable past and lack of business experience. I won't get into all of the details here. Definitely give that video a check out after this one. While I do believe it was warranted, he absolutely stepped up as a leader for this era, to the point where I think he'd even make the former president of Cartoon Network, Jim Sample, smile. With that being said, for the two steps that Cartoon Network would make in leadership and cartoon priority, it would take one huge step back because of a business decision that would make people hate this era. Now, it's no secret that Cartoon Network has explored elements of live action content dating all the way back to its very first era, the checkerboard era. Whether it be in forms of bumpers that featured real life guests in the form of children, celebrities, and even pro wrestlers. During the CN City era, Cartoon Network would then start to feature movies with a mixture of animation and live action elements. In the previous fall era, Cartoon Network
we're gonna get to another video. This is not what I thought it'd be. Appreciate everybody for watching right now. They said we got 2 people in here. Yo, shout out. Make sure y'all join the